Welcome, everyone. I'm Amy Seeley, president of Seeley Test Pros and Leap, helping students to succeed in all kinds of tests from 8th grade to grad school throughout Ohio.
And I'm Mike Bergen, president of Chariot Learning, helping students with Test School and Life based out of Rochester, New York.
Between the two of us today, we have over 60 years of experience at the highest levels of the test preparation and supplemental education industries.
We both love to talk and learn about the latest issues in education, testing, and admissions. So let's get down to tests and the rest. The fascinating topic we want to explore today is, how do you know if you need a college consultant? But first, let's meet our special guest, Jodi Rosenshein Atkin.
Jodi Rosenshein Atkin is an independent educational consultant. She holds a BA and MA from the University of Rochester in psychology and has over 20 years of experience in educational and clinical settings. She is a member of a number of professional industry organizations. During her time as an IEC, she has visited almost 200 college campuses in 15 different states. She is committed to finding a best fit school for every student, considering academic, financial, social, and cultural factors. Jodi firmly believes that finding the right school is a journey, not a race to some imaginary finish line. Welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be with y'all again.
It's great to see you, Jodi. I mean, you and I actually get to see each other outside of podcast
No,
recording.
actually, I saw her at NACAC. I got to attend her presentation, so I got to be a little bit more like one up on you, Mike.
I think that is one
You
up
gave a
on
great presentation that I was so pleased to be able to listen
Thank
to and
you.
participate in. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's awesome. So we've caught up with you, but listeners who haven't heard one of your previous spots on the show, and that includes episode 32, Making the Most of College Visits, episode 160, Demonstrating Interest During Virtual College Tours, episode 523, Why This College, Why This Major. Yes, it's just the whole span of your work here, Jodi.
That's awesome. I didn't even realize I had that many touch
And
points.
it's worth noting that my kids think that her Making the Most of College Visits episode is really good. So for what it's worth, that's one of the ones I get the most
Thank you.
comments on. Yep.
Thank you.
For listeners who are not acquainted with your prior work or appearances, can you share a bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. I am an independent educational consultant. I work alone. I am a solopreneur. So when you hire me, you're not hiring the company, you're not hiring people that I supervise. It's me. I believe firmly that this is a journey, and that's sort of what I'm going to be talking about today. And I believe that there is always more than one place where a student will thrive and grow. And part of my responsibility is to helping students and parents see the possibilities and the opportunities, and then making those best fit matches.
I'm assuming you visited more schools than we have listed for you in your bio here. What are you up to these days?
Well, I've actually crossed the 300 school visit threshold. I have added 2 more states to my array, and I've also done 3 foreign countries.
I feel like IEC should have like a passport to colleges that you get to stamp and you like show that to your like clientele list, right? Because I think that's really important. You get to see them and share because you have firsthand knowledge.
Exactly. And I think being on campus is something that gives me a different perspective than many people have, which is why I'm valuable to families, right? You don't have to. When my kids went to college, we got in the car and we drove places that were totally inappropriate. And we had 4 kids, farmed half of them out, took the dogs, put them in kennels, and we went to places that weren't right. If I had had better guidance, I might have saved myself a lot of time and trouble and a lot of frustration for my children. And that's one of the places that an IEC might have been able to help us.
And so that's kind of a good segue into our conversation, right? This idea of there are people out there whose primary responsibility is to learn more about colleges and colleges in sort of the full 360 perspective, right? Because we know just knowing one thing about one college doesn't help many people. So what's your take on, does every student need to have outside help in applying to colleges?
That's a great question. College planning is sort of like planning a vacation, right? Some people like to get on a cruise ship and it doesn't matter where they're going. They'll get off where they're told. They'll eat what they're served. And that's they just don't have to think about it and they can relax. If that's your vision of college planning, that you're only going to apply to state schools in your state, whether or not that's the most economical, reasonable, or beneficial situation, then go ahead. You don't need an IEC. For students who have very well resourced high schools and whose counselors know them really well and who they can get in to see and start this planning process long before the middle of their junior year, maybe you don't need an IEC. For the rest of the world, I think there are a lot of gradations in what an IEC can and will provide to you. It doesn't have to be a $25,000 a year investment that some people, star spangle this about. It can be very well tailored to a family specific set of needs.
Well, it's funny. One thing you're not mentioning is that you can have all of that available to you, right? You can have great resources at your high school, college counselor, whatever. But I would turn around and say, but do you have a student who will sort of advocate or speak up for themselves and take advantages of those services? Because a lot of our students don't. Like, we need someone kind of leading them along a little bit, don't you think?
I agree with that. And I also think that having an IEC in the mix lets you guys be parents and lets somebody else structure this journey. When I work with families, I always use the phrase college journey. Thank you for inviting me to help be part of your college journey, because we are planning a trip. And if a student doesn't know what they don't know, they can't ask for things that they may want. The average recommended high school college advising caseload is 250.
Well, and as much as 500
I was going to
students
say,
per, I
right?
mean, like that's this national average, I think, is pushing like around 500 kids per counselor, right?
Correct. And the recommended is half of that. It's 250.
Yeah.
And even 250 is a hard place to be, to know them all and to be able to guide them through the process.
Now I'm going to push back a little bit because my
ahead.
kids, four of my kids attended private high schools, right? Where there actually were, designated college counselors.
Mhm.
So I'm wondering when families are assessing like what resources might be available to them at their high school, I'm wondering what your take on is or what you would share about in the event your high school does have someone. Is that, does that preclude wanting or needing to work with a college consultant like yourself?
Not at all. In fact, one of the most interesting students I worked with this year was an international student at a very prestigious private school where there was a dedicated college counselor, but this student had needs that went beyond that person's level of expertise. And he and I partnered. So and that's part of this too, right? None of us work in isolation. I refer students for test prep. Y'all refer people to IECs. I work with school counselors in both private and public settings to say, hey, we're all on the same team. You all want your students to get the best outcomes. I want the student to get the best outcome. And so we can create those partnerships that allow for more in-depth conversations.
Well,
for example,
yeah,
go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, a lot of times at these schools, sometimes I find the college counselor pushes a certain list of schools that may or may not be appropriate for. So even though that is their level of expertise, they sometimes are not getting out of their comfort zone with what recommendations they're making to students.
Look, 300 schools later, I know places that most people have not visited. It doesn't mean that they are inferior institutions. It means they're quieter institutions. I've been to the Ivy League schools. I have been to the big state schools. I have also been to small liberal arts schools that offer amazing opportunities. Not every kid is going to fit into the boxes that a school counselor who has so many other responsibilities is aware of. So this relationship can come in at any level. Some people only do comprehensive, right? You have to buy into the whole program. And that's fine. If you want to know that somebody's holding your hand from the start of the college application process to making the final decision, then you need comprehensive. Some people don't. Some people say, you know what, my school counselor's great. They'll help me. They've got senior seminar. We'll do the application together. The English teacher will be great about the essays. Maybe, maybe not, but that's the presiding opinion. But the list, I don't know. They're not giving me enough options. They don't know enough places outside of the Northeast. And my kid really wants to head west or head south or head to the mountains. I know those places. I've been to those places. If I haven't seen them, I know places like those. I can make those comparisons. School counselors typically don't have the resources or the time to do the amount of visiting and the amount of exploration that IECs do.
So I'm thinking about this question about how do you know if you need a college counselor or consultant in through a couple of different lenses. The first, that of test prep, because there's that question like, how do you know if you need a tutor? Even if you have a tutor at home, for all of my teachers, I've always given them this blanket offer. I'll be happy to work with your kid. I know that your kid probably doesn't want to work with you. I'd be happy to work with them. And I've had multiple tutors who were like, no, this is actually a journey that my son or my daughter and I are going to take together. And it worked out really well. And just like they wanted to do it. The student wanted it. The parent wanted it. They were qualified to do it, or they learned along the way. And then I think of my own home, my own family, where Ivy would not even listen to me about college admissions, even though she knew the amount of experience and the extensive network of professionals that I tapped into. Didn't want to hear it. I also think about on the college consulting side, how Amy and I do profiles of IECs all the time. And one of the most common paths to professionals in the college consulting field is a parent who worked with a student, worked with multiple teens at home, and then learned that they loved the whole process, which is to say, to what extent does family dynamics, the ability and interest of a parent to take the work on, and the ability and interest of a student in hearing what their parent has to say, how do those dynamics influence the question? Because the question isn't always, you always need a college counselor. Lots of people go forward without it.
Successfully.
Yeah. So how do you look at that, Jodi?
I think that every family is going to be different. I have literally had people call me in the middle of a Sunday afternoon and say, there's going to be a murder in my living room unless we have somebody help
Save me
us
from
here.
prison.
Yes. And then there are parents who say, I really want to drive this bus, but the kid may not be wanting to go to the destination the parent has in mind.
It's true.
I literally before this phone call just heard from a student who was waitlisted at her first choice school. Now she has so many options, I can't even count them, that are perfect for a very specific kind of major. The place that she's been waitlisted does not offer her major, but her parents went there.
Oh.
And so there is this romantic vision of, I have to go where they went, even if it means that I'm not going to study what I want to study. I think somebody who can, and I've clarified that with her. I said, you recognize that if you go to this school, you will not be able to come out with the degree that you're seeking at all the other places. And she said, yes. And her parents are encouraging her to take that particular journey. Okay. But at least she has had the opportunity to clarify that and to also see and recognize alternative educational paths, because I have no skin in that emotional game. I don't care if she goes to their alma mater or my alma mater or someplace nobody she knows has ever gone. So I think there's a perspective that an IEC can offer. And also it takes some of the power playing out, right? I think as a parent, intentionally or not, we all have influence over the kinds of decisions our kids make. Whether it's, I'm not doing it because mom said to do it, or I have to do it to please daddy. There is an unspoken dynamic there of parental influence. And I think IECs play an important role in neutralizing that zone of travel.
The neutral zone.
There are
Yes.
so many examples that I hear from college consultants where they ask the parents and the students to generate their list separately to compare them, to recognize that there can often be, if the two parties don't separate at certain points in planning, then it may become a journey that is dominated by a parent, even though it's the student who's going to school.
That is correct. And also, I think sometimes parents don't have enough information. I was accepted there 30 years ago. Of
Mhm.
course they'll be accepted. No, that vista has changed. That was such a party school when I went to college. Well, yes, and now it's a much more serious place. The perspective is not necessarily contemporaneous with the student.
And my guess is too, it goes both ways. Like you're talking about those typical things where parents don't know things, and parents want to say that their student doesn't know things. But what you're really suggesting is sometimes the college consultant can be somebody who they're in a position to explain something to a parent that the child couldn't articulate and have the parent hurt, right? Like, so it's kind of, it goes both ways, I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think the college consultants can provide options and opportunities that nobody in this constellation has thought of, heard of, or considered. They don't know, for example, in a family, oh, we won't qualify for financial aid. You don't know that. You don't know who's offering merit money. You don't know how those decisions are calculated. Oh, they'll just take out a loan. I'm not going to pay anything, and they'll take out full loans. Well, a kid doesn't have any collateral. Who's going to loan them money to cover $90,000 a year of education? Those
Right.
are all factoids that IECs can help clarify. And then you make your own decisions about, like, I guide, you decide. That's the mantra.
Well, and then you allow them opportunities at certain junctures to make some decisions, right? That will determine, there are going to be some sort of probably some curves in the road that may influence how you move forward, but you can help them navigate that with as much information as they might need to make that decision in the moment, right?
Precisely. I also think that one place that there, if there's only one role you're going to hire an IEC for, I would ask that to be the essay process.
So break that down a little bit because you mentioned comprehensive packages, and it's entirely possible that people that haven't gone through this process recently don't understand all the moving parts of the modern college application. What does a comprehensive set of services entail? And then how do we break it out as to the different pieces that somebody might pursue a la carte?
Okay. So everybody's contract, everybody I know runs this differently. Some people will only do the comprehensive, right? They only want to be involved if they can see it from beginning to end.
Which, by the way, if that's who you're looking at, usually you have to engage with them early. They don't
Yes, that is
typically take the
correct.
students at the time parents recognize the need. That's one thing I've learned, right? Yeah.
Right. Or they take them, but there's it's sort of like getting an Uber after a concert. There's surge
Search
pricing
prices.
involved because you have to get things done much more quickly.
That's right.
So what are the pieces? The first piece is generating a list, taking what the kid thinks, what the parent thinks, and what the IEC knows, and integrating that into a set of options. Part two to the list generation, and again, this is all sort of pick and choose like a menu in a restaurant. How do you decide if that's the right place? Well, my brother's cousin's boyfriend went there. Maybe that's just because they went is not where you want to go. It's too far. I'm willing to drive 6 hours, but I'm not willing to fly 1 hour. Let's talk about that, like those kinds of realities, right? So evaluating the list, preparing your activities, having enough time to help a kid not create a resume, because that sounds so false to me for a kid, but helping them identify what their strengths and interests are and then finding opportunities to explore those. IECs are always excited about helping kids do that kind of teenage development, right? We've got this window of time where they can grow. So activities is one. The essays are a huge chunk. And one of the things that I have found is hardest for parents to do is to sit on their hands and not touch those essays until they're done. Because the writing of a more than 18-year-old is not the same as the writing of a teenager. And so when the parent's voice starts appearing, or I think it's really important for them to write about grandma's cancer because they want to be a doctor, you know, that's not necessarily the optimal approach. So how do you approach that? And how do you let the kid have their own voice to present to a college admissions? So essays are one separate piece. You can pick and choose any of this and then say, I just want that. I just want a list. I just want essay help. And many IECs, I don't know about most, many IECs are more than willing to say, we'll do this on an hourly contract.
Thanks for that. Now, very often, if somebody asks me, does the student taking the SAT or ACT need a test prep tutor? I'll usually say, yeah. I'll be like, yeah, of course. It makes sense because you'll get there faster. You'll get further in the amount of time. That said, when people ask me for self-study resources or what does it take, in what instance could you consider prepping on your own? I have some things that I share. What advice would you share for someone for like what purposes, if you're applying to a community college, say, you probably don't need an IEC, right?
Correct.
What are the instances in which you might necessarily not need professional help? And if you were going to go it alone, what resources can be trusted?
Interesting question. Okay. Let me take the second part first. What resources can be trusted? And I'm old school about this. It's not TikTok. It's not the kid ahead of you in school who really liked a place. Like going only someplace where kids from your high school have gone is not necessarily the best set of resources. If you're a self-starter and you can get yourself a good Peterson's guide or similar document that says College Finder is a great book, Steve Antonoff's book, and that will help you sort things out. But language is different. So a kid who wants to study communication design and doesn't recognize that there are 14 different ways that can be presented in a list of majors and doesn't know how to sort that out, maybe they need a little bit of guidance. If there's a full complement of college prep services at your high school that starts early and you are a person who will make use of those, if you have the discipline to do this kind of research and to pay attention and to attend, then maybe you don't. If you are going to want a specialized major, if you are going to want a specialized extracurricular, if you're an athlete who wants to participate in college athletics, if you're a musician who wants to participate in performing arts, those are people who are going to benefit from more specialized input. I forgot the first part of your question, Mike. I'm sorry.
Which college admissions goals don't generally need college consultants? For example, I use the idea of applying to a community college. That's something a person can do on their own. I think there's a lot of direct admit opportunities. There are a lot of steps that students take where they don't necessarily need hand-holding beyond what they're getting in school.
Correct. If you're applying to schools that don't require essays and you are confident that you're going to get help filling out the Common App, fine, go ahead. You would be wasting your money on it. If you aren't sure that you want to go at all, maybe a couple of conversations with your high school counselor and your parents without an intermediary will help you come to that decision. You take a gap year. If you want help with a gap year, then you're going to need somebody to help you plan that. But I think in most cases, and I'm going to be honest with you, in most cases, if you don't have a close working relationship with the school counselor in your school, you will benefit from at least one session with somebody who has a broader perspective. Because if you come from a highly competitive high school and everybody's taken 12 APs and you're a solid B+ student who doesn't have the maximum rigor, but boy, you're proud of that B+, there are places that really want you. but you're not going to be polished and shined in a competitive environment.
That makes perfect sense. Jodi, we could clearly dive more deeply into this topic. Unfortunately, we are out of time. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for giving me the opportunity again. It's always a pleasure to chat with you guys.
If listeners would like to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
The best way to do that is to go to my website, which is Jodi, JodiRATKIN, JodiRAtkin.com.
Awesome. We hope you enjoyed this discussion as much as we did. Be sure to join us for another fascinating topic and guest on the next Tests and the Rest.
Did you enjoy this episode as much as we did? Find expanded links and more for this and all of our episodes at our show page at testsandtherest.com. While you're there, be sure to explore everything the larger TestBright site has to offer, including real, expert, unbiased answers to the toughest admissions testing questions. Of course, we'd love for you to rate, review, and subscribe to Tests and the Rest on your favorite podcast platform. If there's a topic or guest you'd like us to feature, just let us know and spread the word.